Ruiz on the line. Lazaro's been making toys for the last 2 years. I've always been fascinated by just how toys actually get made.
What do I need? What's it going to cost? How much time is it going to take? Do I know anyone who's done it?
Really a lesson that everybody should learn is that things come out of nothing. Things evolve out of nothing. The tiniest seed in the right situation turns into the most beautiful forest.
Hey, Pencil Kings, Mitch here. I know one of the last video game projects I was on, people were making toys for Skylanders, and before that, when I was in college, 10 years more now ago, I did a robot somebody bought and made it into an actual production toy, but I'm really curious how people are doing it now, so that's why I've got Lazaro here today to find out just what it is that he does and how maybe you can create your own toys. So welcome to the call, Lazaro. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you, Mitch?
Really good. How did you get into, let's just dive right into this. How did you get into making toys? I've only known one other person that has been into toys, and I'm just very curious.
Well, for me, it was really a complete accident. The company that I work for now, it's called EOI, and it began as an apparel company, but they've branched out slowly over the years, over the last, 15 years. They're pretty much an art house now, and they sell their services, for creating whatever anyone needs. And just so happened that one of their larger clients requested some drawings of some characters for, to sort of attract children and see what we could come up with. Well, the company that I work with decided that, not only were they just going to draw up some characters, they were going to go full out and create a line and pitch it, So part of this line was toys. And it sort of fell to me. I had to start learning from the ground up. And fortunately for me, I have a team of people that I work under and with. And they've kind of steered me in the right direction. Yeah, and it's a lot of technical stuff. It's a lot of gathering of materials, like you would for a painting or anything else in art. You gather your references first, and then you put it all together. And you communicate that as best as you can, and you send the production specs off to China or India or wherever it is you happen to be making, the hard copies, and then they send you back a sample. It goes for approval, then it goes to legal, and it's a big convoluted. It may sound like fun. Oh, I'm designing toys on the outside, but like anything in art, it's a lot of work, a lot of detail-oriented, hard, concentrating work.
When you were saying that you do drawings for a full turn, can you tell us what that means?
Well, you'd have a front view, a left view, a back view, or a three-quarter view, and you show each one of the views, so that the person producing the item will have, an idea of what each, side of that character might look like, and depending on what the character is and what the specific details of the character are, you may have to have a top view and a bottom view. One of the first things I created as a toy, like my first toy I've ever had actually physically made, was a dragon. So I had to give lots of views to these things because, it had a tail. And so if you drew it from the back, the tail was kind of in the way. So I had to have a separate drawing of just the tail with the details on it and, measurements and the materials that I wanted on it, because it ended up being a plush. There's like a million materials you can use for plush and things you can put in it to make it sit upright and, things you would never think of. Not all the time is it just drawing pretty pictures. A lot of it is a lot of research.
When we had done toys, we were testing out different companies to see what they could come back with. So we would send them 3D models, but I can imagine that just doing the drawings from scratch and then handing that off to somebody, what is that process like? Because it's kind of like you're handing off your baby, I would think, and then what you get back maybe isn't necessarily what you think you're going to get back.
Yeah, and it often isn't. One of the first hard toys, not plush, but one of the first hard toys was a panda that we did, and it was supposed to be for a pen topper. The little toy would go on top of a multicolored pen, and we sent away the first drawing. I did the full turn for it. When we got it back, the ears weren't the right size, but we had to, I had to take it into Photoshop and then like redraw over a picture of what they had, sent us, and, do another China comp and send it back and explaining to them, where things had to be enlarged.
Well, let's say somebody wanted to get into making toys. And so if I want to make a toy and I have some idea, what's my next step? Is it just like starting to draw front, side views? Is it going to collect toys? What would you advise somebody if they wanted to have their own toy made, in the next 3 months? Or maybe 3 months isn't even a realistic time. I don't know. What is somebody going to do when they want to start?
It depends. I mean, if you're asking for like a toy that you're going to sell in the market, it's a completely different question. If you're, asking, is it a toy that I'm going to make for my personal enjoyment? If it's something you're going to sell in the market as an actual product, the first thing I would tell you to do is get a lawyer, because there's a lot of people out there protecting their brand. And if anything you make comes even close, they will shut you down. It's not a friendly place. Now, if you're making it for yourself, there's lots of companies out there that you can, send a drawing to, or, even something that you might make in, a 3D program, and they will print it out for you, and you can have it for your enjoyment. And that could take, a couple of weeks. One of the guys that I work with, he's a very, very talented sculptor digitally. He sculpts in I think it's not Mudbox, but
ZBrush. Maybe?
ZBrush, yeah, he sculpts in ZBrush. He's had a whole bunch of his dinosaurs that he's made for him by one of those 3D printing places, and now he's actually selling them. I wish I knew where it was. I'd plug it for him, but he's very talented, and yeah, so he can make his own. And and he sells them for dioramas and those sorts of things. So that's no big deal. The problems that we run into is it took us like 4 or 5 months just to be able to name these things, because every name that we picked and passed through the legal department would get rejected, because somewhere there was a company that had already created something with a name, that was similar. There's all kinds of legal craziness. It's pretty difficult, at least for us. I couldn't believe we went through like maybe 200, 300 names. These are 5.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
These are 5 characters. So if you're doing it for yourself, you won't run into the, design by committee aspect that we run into all the time, because obviously everybody has an opinion when it's their money on the table. Mm-hmm. So when it's your own money, you may not run into that long list of names that you have to clear. I mean, I know the romance of it and everything sounds like, I get to draw all day and all that stuff, but it's a lot of work.
Why don't you take us through a normal day for you? Like, what time do you get into the studio? Do you work from home? What kind of equipment do you work with?
Well, first thing, I get up about 5:30 in the morning. I check my emails. If there's anything from my personal clients, I answer them as soon as possible. That's one of the biggest things I can pass on. If you want to be an artist, you've got to be more professional than the other guy. You've got to be on time every time. You can never miss a deadline. You can never delay a project. I would say that's more important to be a successful artist than your technique, because there's lots of talented people out there that can't finish a project. There's no going forward. But so I get up very early. I drive into to the shop. I'm usually there by 8 o'clock. Work till about 5:30, and then I go home. Spend some time with the family, about an hour or two, dinner. I spend like, 15, 20 minutes with each of my kids, make sure they had a good day. I tell them God loves them and that daddy loves them. And, when I'm done with all that, it's usually 8 o'clock, 9. And then I go back to work for my personal clients, depending on how my workload is, to maybe, I try to cut it off at 12, but sometimes it goes into, 1 or 2. You got to be willing to put in 14, 15, 16-hour days. And, I don't make a huge amount of money, but my philosophy has always been, if you can do what you love and pay your bills, you're a blessed man. God has been good to you, but you got to be willing to work for it.
And so the work that you're doing in the evenings, is this similar work than what you do in the day? I mean, there was a time when I was an animator in Flash, and when I got home, all I wanted to do was anything but Flash. And so are you making toys and helping people make designs in the evening, or is this different work that you're doing so that you're kind of like, you might actually get creative energy from this other kind of work?
Well, yes and no. Some days, my personal work at home, I have a very varied array of clients. The stuff that I've had to do to become an artist, I didn't take the typical route where, you go to school. I've been freelancing since I was like 16. I've had to do all kinds of crazy things. So when I come home, I don't know what I'm going to have usually. I try to keep, a schedule of what's due when and stuff like that. But usually I get a lot of clients that need things like today. Usually they're small things, but they're critical to what they're accomplishing. So my stuff is changing all the time, which is a good thing. I do a lot of tiny little itty bitty things here and there for people.
It's really interesting that you have such a varied projects that you're working on all the time. So you're able to keep your creativity high and I feel like it would be interesting to work on these different projects versus doing the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah. And my day job with the toy thing does get very monotonous because, like I said, it's very, sometimes it's not creative at all. It's a lot of technical direction, basically, and a lot of attention to detail. And sometimes, some days I get to be very creative, and some days it's just, nose to the grindstone, getting it done. I'll tell you a little bit of how I got into art.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, one of your questions that you had was, how did I know I was going to be doing this as a kid? And I didn't. I had no idea. I drew, so I figured everybody can draw. Like everybody breathes. I just thought that's how everybody was, So it never occurred to me that was like some kind of a talent that God would give you, I had a really rough childhood, so I was a very angry kid, and I was doing a lot of fighting and getting in trouble in school, and I was about to get expelled, and this art teacher, Mr. Tim Henson, sort of changed my life. I was in his art class, and he saw me drawing. He said, "Oh, you're really good." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he found out that I was going to get expelled, and he talked to the principal, talked him into giving me my 2 electives instead of having to do something else, to put me in the art department. And the deal was that if I stopped fighting and I stopped getting in trouble, he would give me, let me be in 2 art classes a day. Completely changed my life. He did me such a huge, huge favor. He made me draw these characters that I did not care about. I thought it was so boring. He made me draw little redneck characters playing banjos and, basses and mandolins and all these things. And I was like, why does he make me do this? Come to find out later, he had sent all these drawings to a bunch of bluegrass magazines that he was a subscriber to because he was really into bluegrass music. I got illustration jobs. And he kind of sort of managed my budding career when I was still in school. I was making $100 here, $75 there. But to me, I was like, wow,
That's amazing.
Yeah, I was on top of the world, and I was like, okay, so let's split it. He's like, no, that's yours. And from that minute on, once he showed me you can make money doing art, I was like, I'm in. That was my art school. Once I got away from him and he wasn't my teacher anymore, I kind of fell back into my old ways, and it took like about 4 years before I got back into art. But he told me one thing that I never forgot. He said, you don't have to be the most talented. There's a lot of people out there with a lot of talent that will be more talented than you, but you have to be the hardest working. If you work the hardest, you will be successful. For the rest of my life, I took that to heart. It's like, I don't care if I'm the best. I don't care if I paint the best or do the best. I'm going to work the hardest. I don't work at the best, art place. I don't work at Disney, even though I do a lot of work for them. I don't work at Disney. It's paid off. His words were true.
My grandpa's a farmer. He worked really hard, and there's just this work ethic in my family. And I applied the same thing to my art. And I always thought that, I would be employable by working harder than the guy next to me. And I mean, not to put the guy next to me down, but that was my bar of sort of like, am I producing enough, or am I working fast enough, or am I, learning enough? And it served me, extremely well. And how do you feel when you see somebody that just has that sort of like genius artist touch. I'm sure that you've met a few people that it's just kind of like magic's flowing from their fingertips. And I've seen a few people, a few concept artists that were like that. And I would almost think that I would feel jealous, but I don't feel jealous at all. I just in complete awe. It's like watching a magic show.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Some of the people I work with have done stuff for, Michael Jackson. I mean, famous people. This one lady I work with, I mean, she's met like superstars. I mean, some of the jobs that she's done, you would just drool over getting that job. The guy that I told you, his name is Andrew Sides. He sculpts these amazing things in ZBrush. I, for the life of me, cannot. The interface is just beyond me. I can't do it. I mean, I can draw like anything I want, but man, I just cannot get into that program. And he just amazes me. I mean, his level of talent and proficiency and how hard he works at it. And I mean, I'm surrounded by these people who are so much more talented than me. It pushes me to be the absolute best that I can be. You have to look at it as the company. You can't let the company down. You can't let the product down, the thing that you're working on. You have to be an integral part. When I meet people like that I'm working with that are so much more talented than me, I try to become whatever they need. I try to be there for them, and try to learn as I'm helping them, so anything I can do at all to help them or to help them on their project, or I like, I'm going to work alongside you and hopefully some of it will rub off.
You're all just part of a team, and the project is bigger than any of the individual people on it.
Yeah, and you got to treat the little projects like that too, and when something's not paying enough and you're thinking, man, do I really want to do this? You got to just do it, because once you start freelancing, your name is all you really have. Because there's a lot of people out there that'll do it for cheaper than you, and they may not complete it, but they're going to sell it to them as cheaper. You know what I mean? So you got to give them quality if you're going to be able to charge what you need to charge,
So let's say that somebody wanted to get into doing toy design like you're doing, and they're in high school right now, or maybe they're an artist and they want to change gears or change fields. What do you think the first step would be for that? What would somebody do to get into this? Well,
one of the things that I did when I wasn't getting a lot of work and I was struggling to get anywhere, I just needed any job. One of the things that I did was I created a personal project. It's called The Major Victory in Kid Verse. It was a comic book, and I was working a full-time, 40-hour job that wasn't art related, and then at night I would freelance to as late as I could every night. And then on top of that, I put this project so that I could get my skills to a higher level. I hadn't even touched Photoshop when I started this project. And then I got into Photoshop through coloring it and stuff like that. And I started educating myself. And that was a huge thing for me, because it had helped me complete something. And then it was something I could show. And it was something that got me a lot of recognition and a lot of jobs from just showing it around. So I would advise, if you like making toys, make one. Get a personal project. Nowadays we have, the crowdfunding. Start a toy that you want to make. Just do it. Even if it goes nowhere, the experience that you're going to gain just from starting something, working through the hard parts of it, and completing it. That experience right there will get you so much confidence to sell what you can do. Because when you're talking to someone who's trying to decide whether they want to pay you to do something for them, you better sound like you know what you're doing. So if you want to do something, get as much experience on it as you can, even if you're not making money from it at the moment. Make it a personal project. Put all your passion into it. That's what I would advise.
Is this something as simple as going to YouTube and typing in, how do I make a toy? Or is this like go to your local library and look through the art section that there might be something there? Just going to the art supply store and asking what are the actual steps that you think would be a good kind of intro into this? You're going to learn so much when you're making mistakes and kind of fumbling, and completing something is where you really want to get to. But what's a first step?
Well, I think you just basically nailed it. I mean, it's like any other art project. When you start doing an art project, the first thing you do is you get reference, right? You get your reference materials. You look up what these things actually look like. That's how I kind of break down any project that I ever take on. What do I do when I go to create a painting? I get my reference materials. So the first thing you're going to do is research it. Like you said, I'm going to go on YouTube and I'm going to go to the store and ask the guy how this is put together. And I've done this myself. I've looked at, small time toy making companies, and some of these guys, you can actually, go to their website and they'll gladly email back and forth with you and give you tips. DeviantArt. There's a lot of people on DeviantArt that make things, I see these guys on there. I follow a lot of these guys that they make their own posable toys, and they have tutorials. But that would be the first step. Gather your references. Educate yourself. You don't start building something without a plan or without the materials. In order to get the plan and the materials, you have to find out what materials you need. What do I need? What's it going to cost? How much time is it going to take? Do I know anyone who's done it before? You follow those steps, just like you would in a painting. You do step 1, gather materials. Step 2, put the materials together, buy them if you have to.
For those of you listening to this right now, what we just went over, this framework can be applied to anything. Like when I came into this, talking with Lazaro, I wasn't sure how to make a toy, but now I feel pretty confident that I could go to Toys R Us, find whatever toy that I think would be cool or something that I would want to make. I would buy it. I'd take it home. I'd take it out of the packaging. I'd play with it. I'd look, see, like who made this toy? What is that company? What is this made of? What kind of rubber is this? Then probably go on maybe to Wikipedia and look at different kinds of plastics, so I would know. It's like, okay, well, I want to work with this kind of plastic or this kind of rubber or this kind of material, and then go through the exact framework that we just were talking about for the last 5 minutes or so.
I would go as far as taking it apart, like actually break it. If it's a 2-part mold, if it's a 3-part mold, how did they, are these seams that are holding it together, are they glued? Is there like a screw on the inside? You're going to want to know all these things, because all that's going to come into the cost. Maybe you might want to get one that was made a little bit cheaper and take that one apart and see what the differences are, because you can go and get a G.I. Joe and they're pretty articulate and they have all these, points of articulation. Then you can go to Dollar General and get a toy that looks like a G.I. Joe and it's not. And you can tell that the materials are completely different, and the way they put together is completely different, and that would teach you a lot about where you got to go. That's what I do every day. I mean, for this one doll that we were making, one of the eyes had to be a button, because it's going to be, I don't understand why, but it ended up being where the eye is a button. And so we had to find other dolls that had used this process, and we did actually find some where like the eyes are buttons. We had to figure out, well, it can't be a real button because it's a choking hazard, and we're selling this to kids. So how are we going to make this a button, but it can't be real? So then we decided that it had to be embroidered, but we didn't want it to look flat, So then we realized that there's a thing called 3D embroidery, and 3D embroidery can be puffed up so that, it actually has a shape underneath the sewing stitches, and it will never come off, and it's not a choking hazard anymore. And this thing was going to have an earring. Well, we can't put
more choking,
right? More choking hazard. So then again, we had to go back to research. We had to go find another doll and see what dolls had earrings, and then we found one that they had used a silver metallic cord that could actually be sewn into the material, and it looks like metal, but it's actually a cord, and it's only about half an inch long, so it's not a choking hazard. We overcame those obstacles like that by just doing our research and making sure to use different materials. So it's a lot about gathering materials and research, really.
So I've got kind of a stupid question here, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I like asking at least one stupid question. Do you have a favorite tool that you use to take these toys apart? I know when I was a kid, a hammer to my toys was my favorite tool for dissecting toys. But as a pro, what is your favorite tool, or what kind of tool do you use to take these toys apart?
Okay, first of all, I don't have a tool for taking them apart, but I do have a tool that has become my absolute favorite tool, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but my favorite tool is a digital caliper. This thing is invaluable because it'll give you inches and centimeters and millimeters, and you don't have to do any converting. This little digital caliper, man, it's awesome. It just gives me the measurements. I type it into my spec file. It's fantastic. I use that thing all day long. It's like the best $15 I've ever spent.
Wow. So is it just like go to Amazon, type in digital calipers, and you're good to go?
Yeah, it's that easy.
Dang. All right. Well, there you
Well, you can spend up to like $50 if you want a really fancy one, but my $15 one is great.
Oh, that's awesome. So if you weren't an artist, what do you think you'd be doing these days?
I would be an artist. There's no way. I can't even fathom that. And that's the thing. I think that if you want to be an artist, there can't be any other choice. It's getting so many people to tell you no, and I don't like your stuff, and no, I'm going to go with someone else. If there's anything else you can do, you will. In order to be a professional artist and do it every day, you're going to have to do this. If there's any other option, take it. Because the money definitely is not here for the most of us. I mean, you could get lucky and be one of those prodigies, and you're going to make a lot of money. But
what do you think about people such as chefs? Do you think people like that could be considered artists? They're not visual artists, but they are an artist. They're creating something that just wows people when they see it or they taste it or they experience it.
No, absolutely. I mean, I've actually, I dabbled in like pretty much everything. I've actually made a cake, and then sculpted all the stuff out of fondant. I had to find out what fondant was, and the different types of candy that you can make, sculptures out of and stuff. And
sounds like fun.
Yeah, oh man, it was a blast. It tasted like garbage, but it was awesome. I do believe that that's an art form. Dance, anything where you are expressing something and it's moving someone else through one of their five senses. To me, that's art. Absolutely.
Awesome. So if people want to see some more of your artwork, let everybody know where they can find you online or anything else that you'd like where people can get a taste of some of the work that you've been doing.
Okay. Well, the toy work that I'm doing is still under wraps. It's going to launch in 2015, so I can't actually show any images of that yet. But if you want to see any of my work, you can go to LazaroRuiz.com or LazaroRuiz@deviantart.com. Those are the two places where I, post some of the crazy stuff that I get to do.
Awesome. Can you just spell that out for us, just in case
Sure.
They're phonetically challenged?
Yeah. It's my first name is Lazaro, Lazaro. And my last name is Ruiz, Ruiz, and it's pronounced Lazaro Ruiz. That's the correct pronunciation. But Lazaro Ruiz will do.
LazaroRuiz.com?
Yeah.
Or Lazaro Ruiz .deviantart.com?
Yeah,
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Thanks so much, Lazaro. I hope everybody listening had learned something about making toys, got that pro tip about digital calipers, and also the framework that we went over for if you want to learn a new skill. I think that was actually maybe the best part of the interview. So if you're looking to learn something new, Lazaro, and I'll see you guys soon.
Thanks, man.
Demands patience, skill, years of practice.
You talk like a fool. I would trade a century of practice for an ounce of inspiration.
That's it for this episode. We'd really love your support, so if you could hop on over to iTunes, hit that 5-star review, and then leave us some kind words. We'd really appreciate it. If you're looking for more, you can find us at pencilkings.com or on Facebook at facebook.com/pencilkings. See you soon.
Another amazing Podcast Magic production.